Hello, good morning everyone and welcome to day 2 of Innovation Week. We've got a lot to get through today, so I think we'll just get started as people join. This week aims to raise awareness of innovation agri-tech projects. I'm Claire Hodge, I'm head of crops at Agri-EPI. Before we get underway with presentations, there are a few housekeeping rules. This is a live webinar, it will be recorded. Questions will be taken at the end of all presentations. We will be online for an hour and 15 minutes. Please interact with us in the chat. Let us know where you are listening from and the company you represent. Questions can be asked throughout the presentations using the chat function. Innovation Week is supported by Leighton, whose expert team work in close partnership with thousands of businesses each year to maximise the financial benefit they receive from R&D, tax credits, grants and other innovation funding schemes. I'm just going to start giving a quick overview of what we're doing at Agri-EPI, looking at future-proofing the arable sector for precision and prediction. Agri-EPI goals are aligned with industry targets, and what we're looking at is science technology, connecting that into the food industry. We know that there's a lot going on at the moment. Everyone's talking about carbon, different changes in food support systems, ELMs, food supply. It's a critical time to get things right, and we're in the right place to be doing something new and different and exciting. At Agri-EPI, we have a great network of farms to work with across the country, 6 specialist farms looking at connecting R&D and specialist companies who can provide solutions. We're investing in technology to support innovation on farm, focusing on ways to capture individual and soil data, individual plant and soil data. This includes robotics, drone spray technology, crop scanning and field phenotyping. Precision and prediction, it gives us an opportunity to support projects by collecting data in field and in controlled environments to develop products that will add value to food production and the environment. Today, we're going to discuss all these opportunities, and I'm really excited to introduce 4 great companies who are part of this revolution in agriculture. We're looking at adding value, and that's one of the most important things. And I've got 4 great speakers in front of us who are going to talk about what they're doing in their businesses and how they can support all of our audience. I'm going to move on to our live guest presentations of the day. I'll start with Dr. Matilda Hayward. Dr. Matilda Hayward is a technical consultant at Leighton UK, part of a global innovation funding consultancy firm. Matilda holds the Master's and PhD in chemistry and works with innovative businesses across the UK, advising on innovation funding. She has used her technical expertise to help businesses benefit from various innovation incentives, including R&D, tax credits, patent box and grants. So I'll hand over to Matilda now to give a quick overview.
Thank you, Claire. I will just share my screen. Can you see my screen? Fantastic. So good morning, everyone. My name is Matilda. I am a technical consultant in one of the science teams at Leighton. And I'm really pleased today to be starting off the session discussing future-proofing the arable sector with precision and prediction. So at Leighton, we work quite closely with the arable sector, helping them access certain funding initiatives and various tax incentives in the UK and globally. So since our inception in the UK, we have completed or assisted with over 1,000 different funding claims across over 400 different companies within the sector. And that's equating to over £44 million worth of funding specifically for the agricultural sector. So during our discussions and our time working closely with companies in the arable field, we've seen a lot of really exciting and really innovative work emerging from the sector. So a little bit about Leighton. We are a global consultancy firm who specialise in pretty much all things R&D. We have offices all over the world with quite a high concentration of those focused in Europe and in the UK. And what we've recently started doing over the past few years is connecting our international clients who are either already working on international collaborative projects or are looking to work on international collaborative projects so that we can offer advice on both funding initiatives in the UK, but also on an international scale as well. So with Leighton, the heart of our business is really technical expertise. So I'm one of 120 technical consultants in the UK offices alone. While my personal background is in science, my colleagues have a range of different qualifications and expertise in various fields, including engineering and software. And we would typically work with the company alongside a financial consultant, so either a tax or an accountancy expert. So we'd work collaboratively to, first of all, discuss with companies what work they've been doing. So really, really lucky to be part of those conversations, discussing all the innovative work that's coming out of the field, and then advise them and assist them with any funding applications they wish to pursue, to both de-risk, but also maximise the benefits that are available to them. So there's quite a wide range of different funding initiatives in the UK. The R&D tax relief scheme is one that we commonly assist with. So this scheme is there to try and encourage innovation within the UK and to incentivise companies to invest in ongoing development work. The scheme enables you to claim back a portion of the money that you have invested into R&D development projects. And that benefit can come through either in the form of a reduction in your corporation tax, but it can occasionally come through in a tax credit as well. So that's a cash injection into your business, which hopefully, I think the idea of the scheme is that it enables you to then continue to invest money into ongoing development work. One of the really great things about the scheme is that it's retrospective, so it allows you to look back over the previous 2 financial periods and then claim back a portion of the money and the time that you've spent. So within the agricultural sector, we currently work with between 20 to 25% of the companies who are claiming on R&D tax credits, which puts us in a really, really good position to best advise on which projects are eligible for the scheme, and best maximise the available funding options that you are eligible for. One of the things we have noticed is that compared to other sectors, the agricultural sector is significantly underclaiming. So we just want to raise awareness of the scheme and make sure that companies who are eligible are making the most of these incentives. Patent box is a really, really good tax incentive if you are investing in IP. So if you're earning profits on any of your patented products, this is a really good one for you. You might want to look into claiming for patent box. Grants are fantastic if you're looking to invest in R&D in the near future. There's a whole range of different grant funding bodies, such as Innovate UK, but lots of others that offer funding for a range of across all different sectors for a range of different projects. One of the really, really common misconceptions with grants is that if you have a grant funded project, you're not able to claim R&D tax relief on that project, and that's not true. The mechanics of the way that it works is slightly different, but you still can claim R&D tax relief just under a slightly different variation of the scheme. So if you do have grant funded projects, make sure that you are also optimising all of the funding options that you are eligible for. Research and development allowances, so RDAs, they are for capital expenditure that's linked to a research and development project. So if you're investing in buildings, equipment or machinery, you can't claim those costs under the tax relief scheme, but you might be able to claim them under RDAs. So just another one to look out for. Across all of these different funding initiatives, the way that Leighton would typically go and approach this, as I mentioned before, is from a financial and a technical point of view. And we just strongly advise that other companies who are looking to claim for any of these schemes adopt a similar approach. So I mentioned that I'm really, really fortunate to be part of a lot of the discussions in the sector surrounding all of the development work that is currently ongoing. And recently we've seen a lot of really, really exciting work under a couple of quite common themes, sustainability being a really, really big one. So whether there is sort of an internal drive within the company who are looking to future-proof the sector, or it's a drive that's coming from the market demand for more sustainable arable products, or it's coming from government in terms of changes of legislation and regulations surrounding what chemicals you can and can't use. A lot of companies are investing in sustainability. So we've seen a lot of exciting work on regenerative farming, carbon sequestration, seen some really exciting work on seed inoculation, so pre-treating your seeds with live bacteria, various microorganisms to boost nitrogen fixation and maximize nitrogen uptake so that we can reduce the amount of fertilizers that we're required to use. And also some really interesting work on irrigation systems, so re-engineering innovative irrigation systems to boost water efficiencies. Another hot topic for R&D would be boosting production and boosting yields. So we've seen some very, very innovative projects on selective breeding of seeds to increase the genetic potential, to increase a particular plant's predisposition for either disease resistance or better growth rates, better shelf life, better quality products. But also a lot of work on developing more targeted, more specific agricultural strategies to then boost production and boost yields. On the processor side, there's also a lot of really exciting work in that sector. So companies looking at developing more efficient harvesting techniques, better post-harvest storage conditions. So I think this is something we'll hear later from Lorenzo, but companies looking to innovate within the storage facilities to maximize shelf life, reduce reject rates, and reduce crop losses. You've probably all noticed that I've got a tendency to focus on the more science-based projects, as that is my field of expertise. But I don't want to miss out or ignore any of the really exciting work that's going on in robotics and sensing technologies, any engineering work, development of machinery and software projects. There's a lot of really, really exciting innovative work in that particular field. So better tooling, more efficient machinery, really, really clever analytical software tooling to enable farmers to deliver a more targeted and more precise approach. So that's all from me today. There is a Q&A at the end, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions then. Alternatively, if you prefer to get in touch via email, it's just at the top of the screen, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much, Matilda. That's very useful, I'm sure, for everyone. We're going to move on next to our next speaker, Jared Bainbridge, who is CEO and founder of MagGrow. Jared Bainbridge is a food sector entrepreneur and has an MBA from Oxford University. Jared is an experienced entrepreneur, having founded a superfood e-commerce business called Raw Beauty Lab, a whole food supplements, and Dark Horse Technologies, an agri-tech startup servicing customers across the UK, Europe, and United States. Jared was a manager at Deloitte, specialising in financial advisory. Here he consulted in technology, infrastructure, and government projects before pursuing his MBE at Oxford and founding Omega Crops. Thank you very much for being here, Jared, and looking forward to what you've got to tell us.
Thanks, guys. I'm just going to share my screen. Everybody can see me, or see the slides rather. Yeah. Okay. Assuming we can. Great. So we are a mega crop, and what I'm going to do today is I've actually got a fair bit to get through, so I've got lots that we want to share. So what we're going to do is talk a little bit about what we do and how we do it, right? So then we're going to look at two specific examples for you. We're going to look at our super accurate yield prediction technology. We're going to do crop loss diagnosis as well, which is very exciting, I'm sure, for everybody out there. And then we're going to have a little bit of a chat about the events in the field, which I'll expand upon a little bit more later on. But if we have a look at what we do and how we do it, we are is in the center there. We are an agricultural modeling company. So we are source agnostic, right? So what that means is we use satellite data and we use drone gathered information if you have it. So what that means for you on your farm or as an agronomist is you have a drone, we send you an autopilot mission, you fly that in the field at your, at your convenience whilst you're out there doing other things. We keep those missions short and usually we sample areas of the field. We don't fly everything ever. But then you just send us that data afterwards, and that forms another layer in our model. We also use aggregated ground truth information. That can be mobile phone information, in-ground sensors, anything else that we can add as an additional layer into our analysis. And what we do with this is we focus on things like super accurate yield prediction, right? Where we predict your arable crop yield of particular like wheat and barley and such, or to within 0.5% of actual. Or we use those that analysis to actually tell you what are the crop loss events happening in your field. When I say what are the crop loss events, I mean specifically what are the crop loss events? Like, is it blackgrass, right? Or is it some other type of weed? Is it septoria, or is it yellow rust, or is it something else, right? So we're kind of that level of specificity, and where is it occurring across your field? And this allows you to be very targeted, and you can intervene very early because you can see everything. You're not kind of missing things because they're just outside of your field of view. There's only so much you can see at any particular point in time, or because they're very early. And that means if you're very targeted, we can be productivity gains because you're intervening early, you're protecting your yield, excuse me, but you're also being very targeted in your application, so minimum cost, and all of that improves the productivity of your field, but it also helps protect the environment around your field as well. So if we have a look at something specifically at the moment, I'll start on yield prediction, and then I'll show you how that leads into crop loss diagnosis. So this is Neil's field. And this was June 2020 last year. And I mean, it's a pretty good looking field at the moment, fairly evenly spread, just kind of eyeballing it. This is an orthomosaic, within the bounds of that yellow box is an orthomosaic of a drone mission that we did over there. That Neil flew because we were never on site in June 2020. And that kind of gray white that you see coming through in the image is actually the best soil reflectance. Now, the historic yield in this field excuse me, is between 8.9 and 9.1 tons per hectare. It's just not too bad, historically speaking. And if you have a look at the NDVI from satellite data as well, it also looks like it's pretty good. I mean, we don't want to, that NDVI is one of the indices that we pull from satellites, right? It's not the only one, and there's many different ways of looking at NDVI, but I've just kind of got this up on screen to show you what we mean when we talk about the difference and what we can get between satellite data and drone gathered information. Because this is 10-meter resolution data and it's a vegetation indice, it will tell you roughly how dense the crop is in a particular area and how healthy it is. It won't necessarily tell you what that vegetation is at this resolution, which is why it's so important for us if we want to do super accurate yield prediction, to actually get some drone gathered data. So from this was on the same day. So this is an analysis done on the orthomosaic you saw just before. And we were able to identify what is crop, what is not crop vegetation in the field. And that created a brand new map, which fed into our yield prediction for the end of year. And at the time in June, we said, you're going to come in shy. It's going to be somewhere between 8.1, 8.2 tons per hectare. Do you want to intervene? Do you want to do anything to kind of mitigate the ongoing damage? At the time, the decision was no. It was June. How much damage had already been done? What's the cost benefit of actually intervening? The decision was we're not going to do anything, which is fine because we don't on-sell any chemicals. We're not kind of wed to anybody that's trying to upsell you onto anything else. What we are trying to do is provide you with the analysis and insight, the intelligence necessary so that you, the farmer, you, the agronomist, can make more insightful decisions about what's going on in your field. So that was fun. This was the answer at the time, 8.1, 8.2 tons per hectare. Much more, much later in the growing season. So September, more mature crop here, nice and rich. None of that bare soil is coming through anymore. It's all starting to look very good, but that was very surface level. So our final yield prediction for this field was 6.4 tons per hectare. And I'm going to show you how we came up with that answer in a second. Because if we zoom in, you can see that there's this green, there's still like a classified map sitting underneath this, but on top, it's kind of obfuscated by a layer that we've got sitting on top. I'm going to show you what that is. So if we zoom in on, say, this section, here you can see the classified map. Dark green is good, light green is less good, down through yellow, orange, red. But you can see that there's something layered on top. So if we zoom in again, right, what we can see here is actually what I'm getting at, because what we've done is we've completely denoised the image. So there is no bare soil in this image. There are no stems, there are no leaves, there's nothing in this image that we do not care about for yield prediction, right? So we extract everything we don't need. We only keep what we do need. And then we analyze the features and characteristics of that. So it's like in this image here, you can see the spikes on the heads of wheat, but obviously that's not the only thing we're looking at. We're looking at a range of measures to inform our final yield prediction. So when we do that across the entire field, we had 6.4 tons per hectare towards the end of the season here. So this is 3 weeks before harvest for Neil, and it was right on the money, unfortunately, for Neil. So obviously not a great result for him in the field, but in terms of our yield prediction, way outside of where that historical kind of anchoring is occurring. And we were very happy with just how accurate our prediction was and how we were able to help him kind of save money at the back end of the season, understanding where that number was going to end up. I show you this example, not just to kind of show you what we can do from a yield prediction perspective, but also so we can talk about the level, like the granularity of the features and the characteristics of the crop that we can see on a plant by plant level. So what we can do is we can then use those characteristics, use those features to also do crop loss diagnosis about the field, around your field. And the way that we do that, right, the way we go from a place of how much yield is there going to be to what are the crop loss events, is that we actually do the work, right? So we actually did the research. We actually grow wheat in a lab. We gave it diseases and weeds, and then we watched, if I can scroll, we actually cultivated that through to maturity, and then mapped those crop loss events, a very high degree of detail. We're capturing data and measurements the entire time. And all of this goes into our proprietary crop model. And at the end of that, that allows us to do very useful and interesting things for you, like actually mapping instances of yellow rust across a field. So this is on the left here is a density map, and then on the right is the incidence of yellow rust in that crop at that time, right? Because this was an organically grown wheat variety. It hadn't had any kind of inoculation sprays. The result was yellow rust was tearing through that crop. Excuse me. And this means that with this kind of information, they can be very targeted in their applications to kind of mitigate any ongoing damage or protect the fields near to it. The reason there's a ... across the top there is because we can also map weeds view at a plant by plant level. So on the left is just kind of a satellite image of that field, just there to describe the uniform appearance of the vegetation during the growing season. In the middle there is when they would actually like to go in and kill the seeds sitting in the ground, right? So there's nothing there at the moment. There's not a lot to, there's nothing to detect per se, but what we can do is, because we've done the work of actually understanding where your weeds are whilst they're there, then we can tell you where the seeds are most likely to be in the ground later, which means when you're doing your intervention before the season, right, then you can be very targeted. So instead of going 40 pounds per hectare, every hectare that I've got, and spending thousands and thousands of pounds, you can be very targeted. And out of your 100 hectare field, the 10, 20 hectares that are actually affected by weeds, you can actually just go and hit those 10, 20 hectares. And you can save yourself a lot of money in the process. And this is great. This is obviously really able to help our growers reach their potential and protect their yields. And one of the other things that must be said that really separates us from a lot of our competition is that we want your experience to be layered into our modeling approach as well. We don't just want to thank you for the data, here's a pretty map, you're welcome kind of thing. Instead, what we want to be doing is saying, well, nobody knows your fields like you know your fields. We want your input into the analysis, right? So the way that we do that is I'm going to show you now part of our new UI. And this is what we call in-field events. So the top there is crop loss events. This is where these ones were created where you walk a field, you see black grass or something similar, you take a photo of it, and what we do is we use that as a layer in our analysis. There's other kind of events as well where you might have flooding and you take a photo of it so that you can understand later in the season exactly how bad that was. Maybe you've got broken farm gates and you want somebody to go fix it. You take a photo of it, you put it in my events, you can send it to them, you can manage your workflow that way. But really, I want to focus on the crop loss events here, because what you can do, it's not just a picture and a label, it's actually multiple pictures. So maybe you're walking your field, you take a couple of photos, you go black grass, black grass, black grass, black grass. And then you go, actually, there's a bit going on here, and I don't want to take a photo of every incidence of it, right? So instead, you just draw a polygon. If you can see my mouse there, that last picture is actually a map of your field, and you can draw little polygons on that field to denote affected areas, right? So all of this gives us an extra layer in the model for when we're performing our analysis, right? Because it tells us exactly what's happening in your field. What's the crop loss event already look like? What should we go looking for, and where is it most likely to be, because you've already noticed it there. And then we can use that as a basis to then go looking for it everywhere else, because we understand what those stages look like. I know you've probably all got a couple of questions about how all this works, so we might probably leave that to the end. But I just want to very quickly touch on some of the other stuff that we also do, because I've spoken about yield prediction and crop loss mapping, but we also do, post-emergence surveys, stand counts, obviously, very early stage weed mapping. So not too long post-emergence, we can get in there and understand actually what do weeds look like in this field at this moment. So you can intervene early if you choose to. Variable rate nitrogen applications, how effective were your herbicide applications? Like, are they having the desired effect? Do you want to do secondary, tertiary applications? What does that actually look like for you? And then the yield mapping and weed maps as well, crop loss diagnosis maps that I've spoken about before. And the other thing is that we're doing this all over the place, right? So we are a British company founded here in the UK. 2 Oxford MBAs co-founded this business. Grant's on the line as well. He's CTO, so he's going to be here to kind of help answer any questions you have later on. But we are, we're doing this all over the place. So Scotland, England, Switzerland, Romania, there's a long list of places there. I'm sure this needs to get updated as well. But that is us. So if you would like to learn a little bit more about it, I think I've kept within time. I started my little stopwatch a little bit late. But yeah, if you would like to learn more about us, then please reach out to jared@omegacrop.com. Don't accidentally type omegacrop, because I've done that as well, and it doesn't go anywhere. So omegacrop.com. And yeah, we're happy to, if it all sounds a little bit incredulous to you that we can do all these things, then what I would say is put us on farm and we'll show you. We'll show you exactly what we can do, and we'll change you to one of our biggest advocates. So we'd love the opportunity. And I think that's me, guys.
That's great.
Great. I
Thank
think
you very much.
Time, have I? Have I done that?
No, that's perfect. Thank you very much. And I hope some people are sitting there thinking about how they're going to take on that challenge. Please do put some questions in the chat box, because we will welcome questions at the end of the session. It quite nicely follows on to our next speaker, Professor Anthony Furness, because once we've targeted where the problems are and what needs to be done, Anthony can come in and tell us how we're going to do this as Chief Scientific Officer at MagGrow UK, following 3-year service to the company as MagGrow Research Consultant, a chartered engineer and doctoral qualified practitioner in research. He engaged with MagGrow on a consulting basis to help establish the company's research framework and associated strategy, and assisted in researching and formulating the mechanistic foundations of MagGrow magnetic assisting sprayer technology. So I'll hand over to you, Anthony, and you can tell us what we're going to do about these things that Jared has selected in the field.
Right. First of all, I've got to share the screen.
Are you able to share?
Can't actually see it at the moment. So there we go, I think. Play from the start. Are you seeing the screen okay?
That's great, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that kind introduction. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As mentioned, I'm CSO for MagGrow UK, and its parent company based in Dublin, a dynamic, rapidly developing and expanding SME specializing in magnetic assist technology and development as a research and technology company. Complementing the magnetic assist technology is a program of research and development focused upon exploiting ultrafine bubbles, also known as nanobubbles. These core technologies have radical and disruptive features that are also environmentally friendly, making them important contributory agents in tackling the significant challenges facing farming and associated disciplines now and in the future. In making reference to farming in this presentation, I'm also referring to those associated disciplines, the stakeholders, and so forth. So they relate to the theme of this webinar, which is future proofing, and MagGrow has a role in attending to that need. So what do we mean by future proofing? Well, taking the Wikipedia definition as a starting point, it is the process of anticipating the future and developing methods of minimizing the effects of shocks and stresses of future events. Anticipation and minimizing impacts are core to that definition. So from a farming standpoint, the anticipation, albeit a somewhat vague term when you come to think about it, must relate to the significant challenges and sustainability goals with which farmers are faced, including, in addition to food production, of course, the issues of food security and attending to the demands relating to the environment, not just climate change and emissions, but other planetary boundaries, and the changing economics of farming, even the prospects of future pandemics. Regarding the means of minimizing the effects of shocks and stresses, the solutions reside in applying precision farming methods, some of which are seen in quite graphically in this morning's presentations, and both stimulating and accommodating innovation is important to solve the multifactorial problems and support the need for ongoing advances in education and research that embeds and embraces environmental and economic understanding. Very important consideration as we move to the future. MagGrow sees a clear role in these respects based on exploiting its current core technologies of magnetic assist spraying and ultrafine bubble technologies within suitable economic and environmental frameworks. These frameworks include planetary boundaries, you see here on the right of this slide, together with monitoring of change and trajectories for these boundaries, wherein so many of the consequences of the developments of agriculture and now they're seen as the need of agricultural practice and innovations to bring them under control. The immediate concerns being biodiversity, as you can see here, and biogeochemical flows, and notably nitrogen. Now, coupled with the planetary framework is the economic framework, and the donut model that you see here provides a useful starting point, certainly for us, in linking, as it does, the ecological ceiling with the social foundation, with its multifaceted issues relating to food, water, energy, health, and so forth, which distinguish this safe space for humanity. The model also embraces the circular economic needs at the centre of UK economic considerations just now, and the critical appraisal of classical economic thinking, particularly regarding systems, growth, and engineering. From an engineering standpoint, these frameworks provide a useful visual compass for considering the impacts of agricultural developments and new technology. Some of these economic and environmental factors are to be seen in MagGrow's current magnetic assist technology, notably performance relating to reduced spray drift and enhanced coverage, manifest in less inputs required, less water usage, less pollution due to less runoff, and less overall costs. With retrofit solutions, the technology can be widely applied and with relatively fast return on investments. It'd be useful if you actually look at the lists, the links at the end of this presentation to videos and testimonials and further information on the effectiveness of this magnetic assist technology. Now, in developing as a research and technology company, MagGrow's parent company has invested in a UK company and in a UK-based MagGrow Agricultural Research Centre, based in Cirencester, which will shortly house advanced track spray facilities and advanced rig force spray research. The centre will also contains our ultrafine bubble research facility, linked just now to our Innovate UK funded project on radical and environmentally friendly agricultural spray technology using ultrafine bubbles. Also irrigation. Irrigation is going to be part of that study. The project is being undertaken in collaboration with Agri-EPI Centre and with CHAP, the Crop Health and Protection Centre, specialising in soil sensing and science. It's a feasibility study aimed at confirming the evidential claims concerning the effects of ultrafine bubbles on plant production and the underlying hypotheses relating to things like cation exchange, nutrient uptake, oxygen transport to rich structures, and so forth. It is also directed at developing ultrafine bubble generation technology and an application-specific ultrafine bubble design methodology. So what are these ultrafine bubbles or nanobubbles that we're talking about and why their appeal? Well, they are gaseous inclusions in liquids such as water, water in particular in the case of agriculture. Spherical in shape and typically exhibiting diameters in the range of 10 to 1000 nanometers. Typically, we're looking at bubbles of the 100, 200 nanometer range, but we see potential with respect to other sizes as well, and indeed with respect to microbubbles, which are just above the 1000 nanometer size. Right. So why ultrafine bubbles? Well, MagGrow has been looking at these through internal foundational studies relating to droplet formation and spraying, which have revealed that these ultrafine bubbles are also known as bubble, relevant and potentially significant emergent technology, offering the prospects of environmentally friendly applications in agriculture and in associated disciplines. Also, further studies have revealed a rich and potentially revolutionary foundations for interactive research and knowledge generation. Now, applying classical physics to these bubbles, they should really disappear in a matter of microseconds, but they do not. The fact is they can exist for hours, days, even weeks, depending upon the media conditions. This longevity, coupled with a set of very useful properties, including size, gas content, surface charge, added surface agents, open up many areas of application. These are some of the properties of these bubbles which point to that wide prospect for applications. Surprisingly stable gas-liquid interface properties, linked to that longevity. Surface area volume characteristics and associated remarkable surface area and gas carrier capability for large populations of these bubbles, coupled with concentrations of gas in solution. The internal and surface adhesion characteristics of the bubbles, the influence of the bubbles upon the aqueous media properties, such as surface tension, density, viscosity of the liquid in which the bubbles are dispersed, particularly in aqueous solutions. As mentioned, the surprising longevity of these bubbles in solution linked to the bubble stability, and indeed to the content, ionic content, and so forth within these fluids. And there is also this size and penetrative capability of these bubbles. Because of their size, there's this capability to penetrate into plant structures, for example, and also to exploit possible adherence to viruses, bacteria, and so forth, which open up all sorts of opportunities within the area of pathogen management. These are some of the press releases we received for this project, encouraging press releases and responses press releases, pointing, for example, to nanobubble technology that could transform crop spraying and irrigation. This indicates some of the areas, the properties relating to those planetary boundaries that I mentioned, which obviously includes more than just climate change, and with certainly biodiversity being very significant at the moment, with worries with regard to exceeding tipping points where the effects could really quite detrimental. That, of course, relates to those biogeochemical flows as well. But there are all these issues to do with freshwater usage, to do with land system changes, to novel emissions, pollution, and so forth that can arise from runoff and so forth that you get in agricultural applications. So together with magnetic assist spraying and irrigation, these properties that one can look at in general terms because of their oxidation reduction capabilities, their capability to remove pesticide residues, for example, and even the possibility of ultrafine bubble alternatives to pesticides. Prospects for foliar feeding, root oxygenation and feeding, fertigation, gene switchage, abiotic elicitation, greywater treatment, soil remediation, agriculture cleansing and disinfection. That latter one, the whole business of biocides and so forth, opens up all sorts of opportunities. However, within the agricultural sector, there is a very important consideration to do with management of pathogens, particularly if you want to avoid killing friendly pathogens. So there's a need for pathogen-specific agencies in looking at some of these applications for ultrafine bubbles and associated technologies in agriculture. MagGrow, in moving forward, aims to exploit and develop the core technologies with looking at spray and irrigation solutions geared to food security, climate change, other planetary boundary problems, and also looking to establish long-standing collaboration projects focused on a variety of spray delivery and irrigation systems and applications, and integrated media and derivative developments. So it encompasses possible prospects to do with aerial spraying, drones, and so forth. It's also looking to develop its international recognition and commercial development. Its parent company is well placed now with internationally with lots of developments going on, particularly in the United States. So thank you for your attention. There is further information through these links that are identified here to testimonials and so forth to do with the effectiveness of this magnetic assist spraying. So thank you for your attention. Any questions?
That's great. Thank you very much, Anthony, for a great presentation. If there are questions, please do, again, put them in the chat function. Anthony will need to leave us fairly sharply at the end of the session, so please get them in quickly so we can make sure we get the most of his time. I'm delighted to introduce our next speaker, who follows on very nicely from where we've just been. Once we've treated the crop, we now go into managing it in storage. Dr. Lorenzo Conte at CROVER Limited. Lorenzo is the founder and managing director of CROVER Limited, an enterprise fellow of the Royal Academy of Engineering. He holds a PhD in engineering from the University of Edinburgh, during which he worked in granular rheology, the study of how granular material flows, and discovered the CROVER effect. So please, Lorenzo, tell us more about your product.
Thank you for this nice introduction, Claire. So as you mentioned, I'm managing director here at CROVER. We are an Edinburgh-based startup, and at the very core of everything we do at CROVER is the world's first underground drone, in the sense of the first device able to propel itself below the surface of solid granular media like sand, powders, and grain. And more specifically, we're focused on using that device, which we call a CROVER, as there's no dictionary word for that, as it didn't exist before, to help grain storage operators maintain the quality of their stock. So why focus on grain storage? Well, that is because it is still today the single phase post-harvest and pre-shells with the highest losses down the grain supply chain. And that is mostly due to the fact that a lot of things can go wrong when you're storing grains in units like silos and sheds. But primarily, if you don't maintain your temperature and moisture conditions correctly, then pests like insects and molds can develop, damaging the grains and diminishing their value. At the same time, the way grain storage monitoring is done currently is very labor intensive. Suffice it to think that by a large majority, the most standard way of monitoring grain bulks, if someone does it at all, is to have someone physically walking on top of the grains with some heavy end spears and taking measurements at different points, which is something that no one enjoys doing, and also has a lot of health and safety implications, because if you if you get submerged in grain bulks by what people call grain entrapment, there's nothing that can save you, really. And also there is a growing regulatory pressure to move away from the classical way of doing things, which is fumigating grain bulks regularly throughout the year, towards what people call integrated pest management practices, which is really, within grain storage is the family of practices to maintain the quality of grains with no or a very light use of chemicals. So at the moment, there are really only two, let's say, families of solutions available out there for monitoring grain bulks. As I mentioned earlier, the first one is sampling or dime measurements near the surface of the bulk that, apart from all the disadvantages that I mentioned earlier, it is also unrepresentative of conditions within the bulk of the grains, because you can only take measurements at a few points and don't really know what is going on in the middle of the bulk. And the more advanced methods usually take the form of static temperature sensors, which traditionally look like temperature probes with sensors at a few points down the length of a cable, usually top, middle, and bottom. And really the main or only innovation in the last years has been in creating still static sensing systems, very similar to the traditional probes, but that add the wireless capabilities. Hence reducing a bit the capital investment required for installing these systems, but still requiring a large upfront capital investment and only providing a limited picture. So as I mentioned, we've developed the CROVER Robo, which can move through bulks of grain in long-term storage, and has got, we equipped it with temperature and moisture sensors so that it measures these two parameters as it moves autonomously through the bulk of the grains and builds a 3D map of conditions within the bulk. So that if conditions go above a certain threshold, whether temperature is above a threshold or moisture, a grain operator receives a notification and they can log into the web-based CROVER platform to visualize a 3D map of conditions and also how conditions have kind of varied over time, so as to take appropriate measures at the right time, such as cooling, aeration, or sending grains into production, or selling them at the best time. So why have we been able to do this and people haven't been able before to literally get anything to move below the surface of dense granular media? Well, because traditionally, if you're trying to move an object through these type of systems, that movement is opposed by very large drag forces, which effectively require global yield to be exerted both downstream and upstream of the moving object. So we discovered, I guess, what you could call a novel physical effect, what we're starting to call the CROVER method, which effectively represents the first feasible method for locomotion through bulk solids. And we've already been granted a UK patent on the CROVER method after only one round of correspondence with the UK Patent Office, because they really couldn't find anything anywhere similar. And we have a family of patent applications in the top 7 markets across the world on the same subject matter. So we started working with the Agri-EPI Centre on Innovate UK, as well as East of Scotland Farmers on an Innovate UK project under the Industrial Strategy Challenge Funds, Science and Technology into Practice for Transforming Food Production call. And specifically, we are working on the development of a new version of our system for autonomously sampling grain bulks while static in storage. That was something, I mean, the main reason for doing that was that it was the most requested feature that we had from all the kind of grain storage operators that we talked to, including Robin from East of Scotland Farmers, and that is why we decided to partner up and started working on that. And you know, thanks to the capabilities of the Agri-EPI Centre, and in particular their satellite farms network. Particularly, we're working with Upper Nisbet Farm near the borders. We started carrying out kind of tests in large-scale bulks. We're continuously kind of improving upon that prototype. So the project started in September. That's when we kind of really started developing that sampling device, and is now getting better and better every week. So the guys are actually on farm, like part of the team is on farm today as well, doing some tests. So as we're trying to develop a company and a product that is not only for the UK market, but can also be adopted international, I think it's important to also say that our product, as well as more widely integrated pest management practice in grain storage, are aligned and are part of the schedule for the EU Farm to Fork strategy, which recently celebrated its first year and has been kind of a lot in the news, discussing kind of its pros and cons. So I'd like you to imagine a future where every single grain that enters a grain storage unit also sees its way out with the same quality. And that is a future when we will keep hashtag saving grains. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much for your presentation. We've got plenty of time for questions. I'm going to make sure we get some for Anthony first, as he will have to leave in a moment. I've got one here saying Sundance has completed an R&D project with FEDE in Spain, but we never got a chance to test in the field due to COVID-19. Is there any interest from MagGrow? And contact details, but can you tell us about, well, perhaps some of the R&D projects that have been going on in connections?
Yes, I've seen that question in the chat box there. Yes, it'd be used to catch up after this presentation and explore further what the interest is there. I'm not seeing an indication of what their field testing was about. That would be useful to know in order to pursue the discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll take note of that contact there and make sure that it's sent over. We have got a few questions in here. For Jared, I think you set everyone alight with your challenge of getting involved, so the questions came thick and fast. Is the drone data essential to your analysis prediction, and what data is required for your yield predictions? And this is quite a big question. So which crops do you provide yield predictions for, and can you share other examples of the accuracy of your yield predictions?
So there's like
there's plenty in there.
There's lots of meat in that from the sound of it. So it's
I'm sorry, I can break it down.
Do we need drones? What data is required? What crops do we do it on? Can I share other examples? Okay. In terms of like, is drone data essential? The answer is no. Like, so we can do yield predictions from satellite data alone, obviously, but obviously, like the more we get, the more accurate we are. The richer our understanding about what's happening on the ground, the better, the more accurate we can be for you. And drone data is, at least on parts of the field, is necessary for that kind of super accurate yield prediction. I'm not sure if Grant sees to layer in something there as well. I'm not even sure if he can talk, actually, because he's in the participant section.
If he's allowed over this side. He might need to answer in the chat function.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll let him share. I will soldier on then, and he can fill in the gaps wherever I leave them. So that was no, it's not necessary, but it's very helpful. What data is required? I think I've just covered that. So it's like satellite, basically some type of remote sensing information on the field is required for us to be doing yield prediction for you. And the more we get, the better we are. Is I think covers those two sections. Which crops? All of your kind of broadacre crops, really. So like wheat, barley, maize, sorghum, rice. That's where we've focused a lot of our time and attention so far. But that, I mean, in terms of being able to push onto other kinds of crops, we're also doing pistachios, and we've learned that very quickly, and that's in California. And yeah, I mean, you name it, and we can kind of point ourselves at it and learn very quickly, because the tough part was building it in the first place. Now we just kind of get to point it at things. In terms of like, can I share other examples of the accuracy of your yield prediction? I'm not going to mention names and geo coordinates, if that's what you were hoping for. But yeah, I mean, in terms of like where we've done yield prediction before, we've had similar levels of accuracy. Doing maize and rice in Portugal, wheat and other arable crops across the UK, soybeans in Uruguay, and like I mentioned before, like obviously arable crops, but looking at also your tree crops as well up in kind of the United States. So I hope that's enough.
If not, we'll capture the contact.
They love to kind of Eastern Europe, like kind of Hungary, Romania, those locations where they do a lot of like wheat and maize and stuff like that. Yeah. I
see Grant has now been permission to join us on the screen. If there's anything that you would like to add. You're on mute. So.
Yeah.
You're on mute, Grant, sorry.
Yeah, I was just lip syncing. I think Jared killed it. It's kind of exactly what I was going to say. I think one of the things that a fundamental difference that people seem to get in this industry and a lot of other industries when it comes to advanced remote sensing is that they look into one type of sensor, or they look into one type of way of looking at a problem, right? Really, when you think about the ag community in terms of predicting yield, it goes all the way back to the 70s. In terms of from advanced satellite data at that point in time, so we're using every single image that we can possibly get over that field, whether that be from drone, satellite, mobile, LiDAR. It could be from anything. To help that model get better. We're just showing the examples from the field that Neil showed. That's from a $1,500
Agri-EPI, and he's happy for us to kind of name drop and talk about his stuff. But
yeah,
most people are a little bit cagier about what's happening on their land. So
that's right.
Yeah,
that's right. But yeah, up there.
There's another question to follow on with that is which spectral bands are used to detect disease in weeds? And then a specific in there, what growth stage can blackgrass be mapped? So I don't know who's the agronomist in the team, but
so which spectral bands are we using? I mean, I think we might be a little bit reserved in our answer to that, only because like a lot of this forms our proprietary crop model, so none of that is kind of publicly available information. What I would say is that we just use everything that we can get our hands on to do that kind of analysis for people, and I might leave it at that. I think that was from Louise. Was that it? I saw that one. Yeah. And then following Louise's question, at what stage? So we're talking about at what stage of can we actually start to see early signs of crop loss, be it diseases or weeds, right? Is that kind of the broad brush of the question from David over at Agri? Yeah, so in terms of like weed presentation, like very early post-emergence, can we begin to kind of diagnose where those weeds are? And I mean, there's a lot that goes into that. There's a lot that goes into that kind of analysis, but what we like to do is kind of we like to have snapshots in time and then kind of compare them back, and then that allows us to understand what do growth rates look like, what does geometric trajectory look like, what does spectral change look like over time, and then we can kind of compare. I mean, there's a lot more that goes on to that. I'm sure Grant's got a million other things in his head because he's actually CTO, where he actually does them in the background. But we compare these things, and then that allows us with a hypergraph there and go, well, this is where your weeds are. We're pretty confident about it. And I mean, we are, we confirm that later in the season as well, because even if you choose to intervene at that time and kind of mitigate the damage those weeds are doing, inevitably not all of them, you don't get a good kill 100% of the time. So you're going to have some that come through to the end, and then we can see that, and then we can kind of confirm back and correct and iterate the model.
And then so there is a follow-on question to that about asking at what stage of yellow rust and septoria infection. So can you see that in those growth stages kind of before you perhaps would by just crop walking?
Yeah. I mean, I think Grant's going to add something to this as well. I mean, but one of the advantages, obviously, from using drone gathered information is just the sheer amount of your field that you can cover at a particular point in time, right? So part of that early detection is just being able to see everything. I mean, if you were walking past it, you might have seen it, but you might not walk past it because you've got a lot of land to cover, and it's easy to miss things, particularly in the very early stages. So with data that we have available to us, and the model of your field and the on the ground understanding about what's going on, we can detect signs of septoria. Grant, you'll correct me if I'm wrong. Like not too long post, like either on the on the day or just of, or not too long post if we've got data at that point in time.
Yeah, it's usually not a problem by that point in time if we're talking about strictly drone data. Yeah, certainly.
So I'm going to throw this kind of back over to Anthony. If you're able to get this information at such an early stage, what kind of impact are you expecting to get? Like, are you going to utilize this information to then have efficiency in field in terms of reduced actives? So the earlier you can get on with your technology, the more impact I assume it will then have. Would that be correct?
Oh, very much indeed, yeah. We have the existing magnetic assist technology, which is fairly well established now, with a lot of units now being deployed throughout quite a few parts of the world, but particularly in the United States. The bubble technology is emergent core technology, but we're seeing a lot of potential in that, particularly if we can raise it to the level where we have a greater understanding of the design requirements in regard to specific applications, and derive technology that can meet the industrial levels of bubble media that would be required in these applications. So yeah, but we're progressing quite fast in this, and I'm hopeful within the next year or so you'll see a lot more evidence of the potential of this technology and the integrated technology combining the magnetocysts with bubble technology.
And that early detection is useful for what you're trying to achieve as well.
Oh, indeed, yeah, yes, indeed, yeah. Yeah, it fits
And
in
I
with
was good,
the business of precision farming.
yeah, absolutely. What I was going to ask you was about the chemistry that's being used. Does it make a difference in terms of what active you're using in the field, or is it just about coverage, or do you have a different impact in terms of what product you're applying?
Well, it's a subject area which involves a lot of chemistry and indeed physics and engineering, and it's multidisciplinary. And when you start looking at the potential associated with the properties of these bubbles, there's a lot one can do in exploiting the expertise of microbiologists, biochemists, and so forth in these developments. That's the intriguing and fascinating potential that one is seeing. It's opened up to so many applications.
Brilliant. I'm going to move over to once we've harvested again. So the CROVER effect, Lorenzo, how does that differ from the Magnus effect?
A very sharp question. Yeah, so I think, I mean, sometimes we get people asking that because if you see something kind of moving as a result of its rotation, then there is the kind of more classical Magnus effect, which works in a fluid, but that requires kind of a combination of some uniform flow against the object, as well as the rotational flow. So it's basically kind of a result of the superposition of circular flow plus uniform flow, which mathematically is equivalent to the leaf force that is generated on a kind of aerofoil shape, basically what an airplane uses as well. Although that is all very different from the CROVER effect. Like if you simply use circular flow in a fluid, that there is no net force being no net translational force being generated. So the kind of surprising part of our effect is the fact that in a granular system, and in granular systems only, circular flow alone is enough to generate translational force, and that's also why we got lucky that there wasn't anything similar before.
Brilliant. Matilda, I think we've got a question in here for you. In the latest budget announcement, the government have launched an R&D consultation. Are Leighton involved, and what does that mean for R&D tax relief?
Yeah, so Leighton are absolutely involved. I guess one of the really great things about us having working with such a significant number of companies in the sector is that it means that we've been able to reach out to a lot of our clients and get their feedback and input on any upcoming changes to the government's legislation in terms of R&D tax credits. And then at the moment, we're in the process of collating all of that information, which then gets reported back to HMRC. So the biggest impact really is that companies have more of an input into their views over upcoming legislation.
Absolutely. I think that's us done for questions just now. Thank you very much, all of you, for your presentations, and thank you to everybody who has joined us. I think the picture that you painted today is so exciting, and people talk lots about challenges, but all I've seen in front of us is loads of opportunity. We've gone from how do you access funding and how do you work around the financial implications of what you're trying to achieve. We've understood what are the challenges and where the opportunities in agriculture and crop production specifically. It's great to see how we can then use technology to kind of avoid problems and target things quickly in action, and farmers really being able to get into that and solve some of these issues by creating an opportunity. And then Anthony can come in and show us the specifics of how you would actually manage the issues and how we make sure that we have good quality produce for the supply chain that we're supplying for. And then Lorenzo has finished it off as one of the most important bits, and we often forget about that storage and making sure we look after that product once it leaves the field. We look after the whole way through to our consumer, so we must be part of that as well. So thank you very much, everybody, for your contribution. Some great questions come in. Please make sure you keep in touch with us, to all our speakers, and you can contact myself if you've got any more questions. If you're interested in animal welfare, Innovation Week continues tomorrow, so will be a session at 10 a.m. again. And again, please keep in touch, and thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.